Let's go ahead and get started. No socializing. Knock it off. Quit having fun. Well, it's good for you. Good to see you come out and brave the elements. This is about as tough as it gets in Southern California. At least we're not in Kansas right now.
Oh, have you seen Michigan? Have you seen the wind chill factor? 40 below. 40, 50 below. Is it really? Okay, that's not a good sign at all. Well, welcome to our class, and it's so neat because we get some
I just didn't hand it to you.
People here I've seen before.
I guess so.
It's always nice to have the word spread and have new people coming out. So I hope you already had a chance to go in the back and sign up, because that way we'll be sending you different pieces of information and challenges for Christianity or whatever it is to have you take a look at, and then come back to class here next week and at least be kind of ready to go. So we just need your email and a way to contact you there.
Thank you.
If you've been here before, you can just, we've got your name, I think. Most of you, if we have your name, you just check it off. You don't have to write up a bunch of stuff. But if you don't mind, just sometime in the evening giving us the name and email. And we have some name tags back there as well. And I was going around, I think I got these little folders out to everybody. And that way, at the end of the evening, you don't just take whatever handout that we're doing and just fold it up and goes in a pocket, and then it goes in the washing machine or wherever. So this is a way to kind of keep it organized. And we're just doing a little housework here, figuring things out. So Steve is back there. I bet a lot of you already know Steve, and he and I are going to be co-teaching during this time. And I'll let him introduce himself when he comes up. He'll be doing the second half of tonight. I'm a community college teacher out of Palomar in the English department, so don't let that frighten anybody. And so we're going to do something a little different. Every time we have this class, we try to take on something new. We've done books, we've done DVDs, we've got guest speakers. And we thought it might be really practical this time to weekly throw out some challenges that people have made about Christianity. And I was just thinking of one that I'd like to do in the future, one of these classes, and that is, you ever heard people say, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious? That's pretty common, isn't it? I'm spiritual, but not religious. So if you're hit with that, what would you say? What kinds of things can you say? So that's the sort of stuff that we're going to do. Somebody may say, well, I don't think Jesus ever lived. They may say, how do you get by with so much pain and suffering if you think there's a good God? And there are all these challenges out there. And so what we're hoping to do is to have you think about them during the week. And if you have the time, maybe do a little research and go online and talk to other people, and then come back and we'll all kind of share some ideas. And so that's what we're going to be doing this set of classes. We go till April 18th, so it's 12 classes. And I'd like to know if we have some people here for the first time, and the answer is yes. So how about in the back there? Just give us your name, please.
My name is Blaine.
Blaine?
Yeah.
Okay, hi, Blaine.
My name's Paul.
That's Paul. And anybody else in this? How about way in the back?
David and Francie.
Yeah, David and Francie, I know them from the SALT class. Go in there. Doug?
Doug and Missy.
Doug and Missy, I know them. This is nice. This is like getting some old friends back together again. And this is Amy. Amy, you heard heard about it because there was a small group that met in a person's home, and so that's going to be what, 2 or 3 years ago.
It was at least a couple years
Yeah.
ago, yeah.
So she thought about that and has come here since then. So, and Ron, yeah, his wife is Bonnie, so Ron and Bon, nice set of people that I know already, and I know Perry.
Perry, yeah.
This is Perry, teacher in the Poway School District. If you want to know physics and all things abstract, talk to him. You're teaching what now? Is it? AP Physics over at Santa Fe Christian. So he retired like I retired, and then we don't just lie there, so we're still working. And so he's teaching. That's a lot more fun just teaching 1 or 2 classes, isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah. And you don't have to go to department meetings, do you?
Well,
Oh, okay. I skipped those completely. It's wonderful. Otherwise, I'm around a bunch of real pagans. If I go to those meetings, this is a wild group of people. Anybody new on this side? I don't think so. So we got everybody that's new. Anyway, welcome to the class. Sure glad you're all here. I want to thank Peggy for providing all the snacks back there. That's Steve's wife. And Peggy is sitting right over there. That's Peggy. Thank you, Peggy. And so, thanks for the snacks. And if you have a chance and if you feel like contributing, it'd be great to bring some snacks once, just one time. You can sign up in the back. We provide the coffee and the water and things like that. So it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be just something really simple. So that would be super nice. I wanted to, well, I'll get to this in just a second. I wanted to mention two people that have made this class go for the last, I don't know how many years. One is our tech guru in the back, Alan. You know Alan. Most of you do. So thank you, Alan. I'm anti-tech. He is pro-tech. So he takes care of me when I make all my blunders with technology. It really crushed my spirit tonight. Steve was looking at my computer because he wanted to see something was going on. He looked at it and he goes, "Don't you organize this thing?" I said, "It's alphabetical, it's organized." He said, "No, what about folders?" I said, "How do you do folders?" So anyway, that's where I am when it comes to technology. So somebody's got to rescue me. And the other person I want to thank over and over and over again is Sharon, who's sitting in the back row. That's my wife, and she takes care of everything. Just some places that you might want to go to for further information. We're going to be videoing, is that the right way to put it? Recording the messages here every night. And so we've got what now? 2 years of it maybe now?
More than that. Well, no, about 2 years.
About 2 years of it is on, can you get to it via Facebook or do they have to go to YouTube?
Either one.
Okay, either one. If you go to YouTube, you just type in EFCC Apologetics. And you can find out some of the past messages, and we do something different all the time, so that might be useful to you.
And if it's Facebook, you type in the very complicated EFCC Apologetics.
Yeah, that'll get you there. And plus, people post a lot of things on the EFCC Apologetics Facebook page. Everybody except me. So I'm not down. I just don't. I can't do it. So I just stare at it. And then check our website out because we have all sorts of videos and audio recordings that you can download if you want. And Steve and I both have websites. Steve's is Biblical Worldview Academy, and mine's Apologetics for Life. And we both have all sorts of stuff there that may be of interest to you as well. So what's our class format? If you haven't been here before, we start at 7, a little bit late tonight because there were so many different things going on, which is fine. But we try to get started real close to 7. And I say main presentation, but it's going to be plural this time because Steve will do half and I'll do half. And so we'll try to share each evening. And then we try to save a little Q&A time. May or may not happen. We'll see. And then we end at 8:15, but you're certainly welcome to stick around. Some people hang out and get more munchies or just want to follow up questions or do something. Then other people have to really scoot. So we'll try to stop at 8:15 for you. I wanted to share something with you that I thought was so neat. Between the end of class in November and our starting now, I didn't ask for these things, but people would just send me or see me and start talking about the apologetics class. And it just really excited me because Steve and I love doing it anyway. But to actually get some feedback where people have been in the class and they've said, hey, and so I just wanted to share, I won't mention names or anything, don't want to embarrass anybody. But here's a couple that said, both of us accepted Christ as our personal Savior when we were kids. Before taking the class, we'd grown to know what we believe, but EFCC's apologetics class gave us the meat and potatoes of why we believe. So not necessarily the what, but the why. And ignited a fire to dig deeper in our walks as Christians. We learned why the Bible is true, why Jesus is the only way, and why we believe these truths, which is important to understand since eternity is involved, not just our eternities, but others' eternities as well. Not only did it strengthen our personal faith, but in this culture of religious pluralism and New Age tolerance, claiming all beliefs are true, it's absolutely necessary to be ready to give an answer for why Christ is the only true answer, in caps, O-N-L-Y, only true answer. And then she goes on to say, we especially believe parents of young children should take this class to be ready with the knowledge they need to shepherd their kids in seeking the truth. And boy, don't get me started on that, but we are losing so many kids who sit there in church and nod their heads and sing the songs and go on the trips. When they hit 18, they just disappear. And we lose something like 3/4 of the kids, something like 70–75%. They've done these studies and it keeps coming up that high. And there are ways that we can keep them in. One of the reasons they skip out on this thing is they don't think we have the goods. They don't think we have the truth. And we do. And so somehow it's not getting across. And so that's a big, that's on my heart a lot, is taking care of the next generation and keeping them Christian as well. Okay, so that was one. Here's another one. I never knew what apologetics meant. It would probably need a better name, but last winter when Dennis was encouraging the church to get involved in small groups, he mentioned from the pulpit that the apologetics class was getting started for the winter session. And he offered a brief, know how to defend what you believe, summation. I decided Dennis is trying to encourage the congregation to go deeper. I did want to go deeper, and as I weighed my options, I opted for apologetics. It's encouraging that there are so many in our class who are serious about apologetics. Great material, stimulating thoughts. And it says with heartfelt appreciation. Here's the third one then. I keep coming back. I want to learn more about the Bible and why we believe it's true. I love the class. I'm so grateful and blessed that a church like EFCC has this. Not enough churches do. Boy, amen to that. Steve, you said something interesting the other day. You said from what you went online, our church is the only one that has a continuous apologetics class that you could find?
We have a mic.
We do.
The reason we're doing the mic thing, by the way, is it picks it up so much better for the video.
Yeah, a woman contacted the church from Philadelphia and said that she typed in the word apologetics and put church after it. One church in the world, one church in the world came up, Emanuel Faith Apologetics.
Wow.
That was it. She said, there's no other church doing what you're doing. And so she was calling Greg Lane to commend us for this class. Other, shall we say, organizations came up, but not churches. There just aren't churches. And it's a sad reflection. There's a lot of reasons why, but know that this is unique.
Yeah, it made me feel good, but it made me feel sad at the same time. That should be all over the place. Every church should have this. This is not an optional kind of thing just for people that want to sit around and be intellectual or something. We're going to come across a couple of those verses in just a minute. So what is apologetics? Well, all it is making, it's a fancy word, it's a Greek word, but all we're doing is just making a case for the truth of Christianity. That's all. It's just various methods, and we'll be doing a lot of those as the class goes on. Things like, why do we think there's a God? Or Jesus really did live. We have evidence for that. He really was resurrected. Trusting the New Testament documents. I mean, these are kinds of things that come up in apologetics. And I sent you something from Sean McDowell, and I won't spend a lot of time on that tonight because you had a chance to read it. I hope if you didn't get it, let me know, especially if I'm just getting you on the email list. And I can send it back out to you. But Sean McDowell wrote something called 6 Reasons to Get Apologetics Training. 2019. So start of the year, a good time to think about things you want to accomplish for the year. So he said things like this: serve the church. You might be part of a small group here, you might be part of a Sunday school class or something where if you got a little training in apologetics, you could share with that class. Because it's a shame. This church is huge, and some of you come from other churches. They don't have that kind of training. They don't have those people that know this kind of stuff. And the key word that keeps coming up when I've asked people to tell us what you think about the class, they said, I gained confidence in the truth of Christianity. And if you can share that with others around you, give them that kind of confidence. There it is, building confidence. Do we dare say have fun at church? That's what Sean said. Yeah, we're pretty laid back. I think we have a good time here, and it's fun for me to get to know a lot of you, so I hope you have a good time here. Protecting the church from heresy. Is this a good time to be doing that? Yeah. Is there a lot of heresy out there? Yeah, you bet. Using resources. Sean says this is the great golden age of apologetics. Resources all over the place. And he's right. Good land. DVDs and downloads and speakers and books and magazines. And it goes on and on. So much is available. So if you're interested, in fact, I should put a little mental note here. I'll send you out a resource list that we have just to get you started. Some good websites, some good magazines and certainly books and things like that. And then isn't this the key thing out of all these others? Why are we doing this? Just to entertain ourselves on a Thursday evening? We got better things to do. But we're hoping to change lives. As that one letter said, eternities are at stake. And we can hopefully just drop a stone in somebody's shoe, get them limping a little bit and thinking about these things. And Dennis Keating, remember he was referenced in that letter from this one person? This is what he said about a year ago. He said there's a deadly difference between truth and error. By the way, if you don't know, Dennis is the pastor here. He said there's a deadly difference between truth and error. What you believe will determine the way that you live, so be very, very careful what you believe. This is why we teach the truth here. We have an apologetics class that will help you defend and know what the truth is. So thank you, Dennis. And by the way, I almost forgot, Steve was mentioning our church. If you see Scott Smith around, you can't miss him. If you see Scott Smith, tell him thanks. He's the pastor in charge of the apologetics, and he's always asking, what can we do to make this work? What do you need? And so this church doesn't just tolerate us, it embraces us, and so we've always appreciated that. And Greg as well. Well, what do we need to know as we begin to think about apologetics? People say, do I have to go out and argue with people? Do I have to get, the neck muscles going and spit flying and finger pointing? And that's absolutely not true at all. All we're trying to do is defend what we believe is true. And we can do that in a real casual, informal, comfortable setting. It does not have to involve back and forth argumentation. So we're not talking about that. And what we're going to do, and you'll see that as we continue through the 12 weeks here, we're going to be building a cumulative case, meaning think of a courtroom. You've got 3 pieces of evidence against a suspect. Would it be a stronger case if you had 10 pieces? Yeah. If you had 15? Yeah. And so what we're going to do is to try to build a case based not just on one thing, but built on sometimes scientific evidence, sometimes philosophical evidence, sometimes historical. I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can defend Christianity. So we're going to be building cumulative cases here. And everybody's supposed to be involved in this. This is not, as I said, for some kind of tweed jacket wearing crowd. Okay, so it's anybody. And it does not say we don't ever want to claim that we're going to twist somebody's arm into heaven. That's God's job. But our job is to be faithful and to at least get the word out. And I just want to share a few of the verses that are on apologetics, and you probably know some of them real well. This is the famous one. This is the cornerstone verse. It's from 1 Peter. But in your hearts, set apart Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do it with gentleness and respect. So there we go. No argumentation necessary. We're not notching our gun belts and saying, made him look bad. And that's not the point. Here's another one from Colossians. See to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy. So you see it can be used as a defense against those heresies we were talking about before. So I like that verse. You'll protect yourself. And then in Corinthians, same author, Paul says you can use it as an offensive weapon. Not being offensive, but look what he says. We can demolish arguments. And we take captive every thought. Are there a lot of bad arguments out there? Yeah, all the time. Sharon came across this and shared it with me just today. So I said, oh, that's so good. So I put in it's Philemon. Not exactly something people spend a lot of time reading because it's pretty short, but just a little nugget in verse 6 said this. I pray that you may be active in sharing your faith so that you'll have a full understanding of every good thing we have in Christ. Isn't it interesting the way he puts that? He says, get active in sharing your faith, and as a result of being active, as a result of thinking about stuff, as a result of anticipating challenges, what happens? You get a better understanding of your own faith. You all know that. If you teach something, you know it far better than if you just sat in the class and somebody else was teaching it. So Paul's saying, get out and make things happen. You'll gain yourself as well as changing other people. I also want to mention something that I brought up to the front here, and I think we have some in the back. If you like this idea of apologetics and you don't feel like you're getting, you can't, in one 12-week session, you can't get everything in apologetics. It's huge. It's like the ocean. It's just endless. So we've set up, I say we, the apologetics group that Steve and I are part of called San Diego County Apologetics Network. We set up a certificate program where it gives you the foundational material about God, the universe, and everything. Okay, so we'll be covering topics like the existence of God, the Trinity, life, death, resurrection of Jesus, reliability of the Gospels, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Islam, science and Christian issues, church history, tolerance, and on and on. So if you'd like to really get kind of a quick format, you can do this program. It's free, and you just either read a book, which I'll supply for free. You can watch some videos. You can do some audio downloads and take them with you and just answer some questions. And so if that's interesting to you, talk to me later about that, or come get a brochure. I think we have enough time. I'm going to cover this real quickly. I wanted us to take one issue, like we're going to be doing from now on, but I want to take a real basic issue and just show you, you know this already, most of you do, just show you how you can do different ways of building that cumulative case we were talking about for whatever the issue is. So I thought, why don't we do the big one, does God exist? All right, so let's start in on the kinds of support that you could have. Somebody says to you, there's no God. What are we going to do? We're going to build a cumulative case. And we're going to do different areas of knowledge. So here's an example. And here's where you come in. If you thought of trying to argue for the existence of God and you went to science, would you have any place there that you could start building your case? Okay, give me some ideas, Rick. Complexity of life. The more they find out about that little cell and they zoom in on it, they used to think it's just a GABA protoplasm. It's like Jello. What's going on there? Well, it's like a city. And the more they discover, the more they find it's wild. You got little microtubules that make like little highways for stuff to go flying across it. You got a bird. Yeah, so the complexity of life is a great argument. Science is swinging over to our side when it comes to God. Anything else that you would argue from a scientific perspective, Bob?
The universe.
The universe, meaning what? How did it come about? Yeah, what? The old.
Evolved.
Yeah.
Perfection is so perfect. How else could it have been?
Yeah, where did it come from? Why is there something instead of nothing, as they say? And then that universe expanded, and it didn't just blow apart like a grenade. It's expanding in a certain rate that's exactly right. If it expands too slowly, it turns into one big gob. You don't get planets, you don't get stars, you don't get gas. If it expands too fast, you just get gas, which means you don't get planets, you don't get stars, and you don't get us. So, sure, the universe is a good argument. Anything else from a scientific perspective that would make a good argument? Yeah, Rick?
Why can we think?
Yeah, why can we think?
That's the purpose of our mental thoughts.
Yeah, that's good.
That could apply to making a car or something like that.
Sure. How about the beginning of life? There's another one. Yes?
Well, if evolution is true, why are we alone?
If evolution is true, why are we alone? 20, 30 years ago, they were so optimistic. Life was out there. It was just teeming throughout the universe. You remember those days. Carl Sagan, billions and billions. He said there were all these places out there, and they started these searches, extraterrestrial searches, SETI study, and they thought, man, just wherever you turn those radio telescopes, you're going to pick up all this FM and AM, from someplace else. And what have they done so far? What have they found? Zip. Nothing, nada, nothing at all. In fact, I read a book not too long ago called The Eerie Silence. You hear that title? The Eerie Silence? It's by a guy who's not a Christian. He's not a Christian at all, and I think he's uncomfortable with this, but he said, I think we're it. Now, for a person who's not committed to the Judeo-Christian view to say, I think we're it, wow, that's pretty powerful. He says, we're not just we as the way we look, but he said we're probably the only intelligence in the entire universe. He keeps seeing how complicated, like Bob's talking about, how complicated things are to get life going, to make it happen here on one planet. It's just an amazing coincidence, huh? All right, so you've already... Oh. Okay. So we covered these things. The design, the start of life, the start of the universe. Have you heard about string theory?
Yes.
String theory? String. Okay, so Perry knows more about this than I do, obviously. Have they given up on this, or are they still big on string theory? Okay, so some physicists are big on string theory. Here's the theory, that the universe, when it came about, tell me if I'm wrong, because when the universe started, there were multi-dimensions, something like 10 or 11 dimensions. And they've all rolled into, the universe grew, our 3 dimensions grew, but the other dimensions are still here, but they're all rolled up really, really tiny, and they vibrate, and that's what creates all of the elements and all of the smaller particles that make up the elements, things like the leptons and quarks and all that kind of stuff. Now, it's not proved. How do you prove this? But isn't that interesting? What is that saying? That all the stuff that we look at today may be only a small part of reality. There may be other dimensions out there. Well, who else lives in other dimensions? God. So I think we're back to the God issue again. Is that close to what they're saying? Is it okay? Again, not proof, but that's on our side. So I like that. How about philosophy? We're still talking about we're going to pile up, we're going to try to create that cumulative case. So you got scientific evidence. Here's a philosophical evidence, isn't it? If you say, well, the universe has always been here, can you infinitely regress? I don't think so. I mean, there's got to be, what did Aristotle call it, the first cause? I mean, something's got to get things going. You can't just have something here forever. You ever thought about that? If things were here forever, we would never be at this point. I'll let you think about that one. I mean, if you can't count to infinity, you couldn't count to get here. If things have been here forever, there's got to have been a starting point. All right, so that's probably why most people don't major in philosophy. I'm going to try this again. I just put new batteries in this, Steve. Brand new batteries. That was my problem. Technology. Okay. So I'm back to doing this. I think somebody already brought this up. Morality. Where are we getting morality? Why do we say you should or you ought? How do you get should out of stuff that's in the universe? In other words, rocks and gases in the atmosphere. I mean, there's no ought or should about it. They just are. Why do we feel that things ought to be a certain way? Why do we gripe about the bad and the good? Is it just personal dislike? Or do we really think there's a standard out there? If there's a standard, where'd that standard come from? So, I mean, these are just philosophical arguments that you can make. How about intuitions? How does the Declaration of Independence start? It says, we believe these are true. These are self-evident. They didn't even prove it. They just said, we know that. You're going to try it? Okay. Existence of the soul. Can we argue for the existence of the soul? You can't put it on a test tube, but there are lots of ways that you could argue that we have a soul. If we have a soul, there are some things that are not part of this physical world. God could be part of that as well. And if that sounds like fuzzy stuff, again, you can do that SD CAN thing, and our websites have a lot of stuff on that as well. How about personal reasons? Have people encountered God? I bet a lot of you have some great stories that I've never heard. Answers to prayer. Things that you say, that could not happen in the physical realm. It had to be something spiritual involved with. Miracles, seen or heard of. There's a 2-volume book. It's just a monster, really powerful. You want to try it?
That's the problem here.
See if it.
The laser. So if the batteries are working, you're just not getting connection. Maybe you can change.
No. Okay.
It doesn't like you, Gary.
Yeah, am I surprised? No. Quick story. The first 2 days out there at Palomar, Monday and Tuesday, I go into a classroom, and it's got first week. First day, I've got this video projector. I want to show the students something online. It doesn't work. So they tell me how to fix that. So I go, okay, I'm set for the second day. So I go back to that same room, second day, and it's got a new problem. So I have to call IS people, and now we're on a first name basis. Okay, so at this point, let me introduce Steve, and he can introduce himself if he wants to. And so we're sharing the evening, and it's his game now.
I'll bring it up to you.
We're going to replace your, I got this, am I on? Alan's got to bring me up. There we go. But it's such a privilege to work with Gary that we share this. It's so much fun to do this as a team rather than trying to do this by myself or him doing it by himself. So it's a privilege each year that we get to do this together. Little background on me, and I taught middle school physical education for 33 years, and now I'm teaching college students at Cal State San Marcos. I'm in both the ed department, training credential teachers how to teach quality physical education, and I'm teaching kinesiology students about what pedagogy means, which is simply another word for teaching. So then also I was a pastor at both Mission Hills and Emanuel Faith for over 3 years. I have a master's degree in Christian apologetics, and I love to train and to share Jesus with anybody who will talk to me. Bob knows that. Bob and I did Cruising Grand together, and we had a great time. But I'm going to go through some principles. That's what I took on as my task, is to take you through some principles so that when you get some problems, when Gary and I send out maybe some passages to see if you can come up with answers before you come to class. So I'd like to give you some principles for doing this. One principle is forget about technology. Maybe. Oh,
It's the laptop.
okay. We have failure. You're going to have to get a new laptop, Gary. All right, we'll do it by hand here. Now, last year we went to Balboa Park. Some of us went to Balboa Park to talk to the atheists. They set up a booth. They have an area that they have with a easy up and their brochures and everything else. And I went with Tracy Kreckman. Tracy's part of this group. And I got in a conversation with a variety of atheists for about 2 hours. And when I was leaving, I picked up one of their brochures. Now, of course, the brochures are to convince us that Christianity is false, and their attacks are on the Bible. And so I have a website, and I decided to start answering their attacks. And I took on about 20 of them. There were more than 20. You can go on the internet, and you can find tons of attacks on the Bible. They're all over the place. And so, for the most part, I'm going to take you through some of these challenges that are posed against the Bible. Things that they say, if this is true, Christianity is false. And I'm a healthy skeptic. I hope you are too. I hope that's why you're here, because you want answers. And so there is a healthy skepticism. A healthy skepticism is one who wants answers and can find answers and arrive at answers. An unhealthy skeptic says there are no answers, period. They're not skeptical of their skepticism, which they should be. So I'm going to take you through 5 principles for answering objections that come about. Some of them will be specific to the Bible. First one is put the ball in their court. And some of this material we've gone over before. If I look around this room, I see friendly faces that have been here multiple times, but that's okay. It was good for me to review the material that you're going to get review of. And the first thing you need to do is learn to ask questions to put the ball in their court. And the first Columbo question is, what do you mean by that? This is a way to make sure we understand what their viewpoint is. What are they proposing? What is their question? What is their challenge? And a few things we can get from that. First off, it gives you a little extra time. If I can't answer somebody, I'll ask a what question so I can think about it. It's almost like a stall tactic by asking a question. Let them then expound. So it'll give you some extra time. You'll gain information either for that moment or for the future. Also, it's a conversation starter. When you don't know where else to go, you just say, when you say it's a contradiction, what do you mean by that? Can you show me any contradictions in the Bible? This sort of thing. It's asking this what question. You also don't want to misrepresent their view. Very important not to. There's a fallacy that is called the straw man fallacy if you misrepresent their view. What's the straw man fallacy?
You build a case that's similar but not exactly their case, and then you destroy it.
Yes. If you can think of a straw man being something that can be knocked over easily, we then build up this wonderful case, and it's not their view. And we knock it down, we do this great refutation, and the person says, well, I don't believe that. Well, that's the straw man fallacy. People do it to us, but we also can be guilty of doing it. So that's why we ask that what question, because we want to make sure that we take their objections seriously and that we know exactly what they're talking about. We don't want to refute a false belief. Now, once we understand their beliefs, we can move towards the second question. And we have to establish who has what is called the burden of proof. What's the burden of proof? Well, it's the person needs to give evidence for what they believe. That's the burden of proof. Who has the burden of proof? Whoever makes the claim. As simple as that. Someone says the Bible's full of contradictions. That's a claim. Therefore, they have the burden of proof. So we need to learn how to put it in their court. So the first rule we have is don't argue with an assertion. Assertion is simply when they throw out something like there's contradictions all over the Bible. You can simply say, how did you come to that conclusion? As simple as that. Again, we're trying to put the ball in their court. We don't need to take the ball. Let them have it, especially when they put forth an assertion. Now, I had to teach my own kids this. They would argue all the time over silly stuff like who's the best band or whatever, who's the most famous person on television. They would throw things out like Pearl Jam's the best band. And then they would go after each other. I'd say, wait, time out. You don't argue over assertions. When the person says Pearl Jam is the best, you say, why? Why is Pearl Jam the best? How did you come to that conclusion? You know, today my kids can out-argue me. Not only did I train them well, they're smart. And they're good at it. We can be good at it. We can be good at it. What do you mean by that? And how did you come to that conclusion? You see, an argument's like a house. An assertion is the roof. People throw out the roof. The roof is the conclusion. They throw it out at us. God does not exist. That's just a roof they throw out there. The walls are the support of a house. The walls are the evidence for their beliefs. And so we need to ask them, what are your walls? What evidence do you have? How did you come to that conclusion? Again, we're putting it back in their court. So, our first principle, whenever, especially when you're talking with somebody, Gary said with gentleness and respect, questions are with gentleness and respect. By putting the ball in their court, we're not being offensive at all. We're asking questions. We're letting them do the talking. So much of the time, what you're going to find is they stutter because they don't know what they believe, and they're going to just go, because they're not used to Christians putting the ball in their court. Yes, Bob, you got something?
I had one individual say, I don't know how I came to that conclusion.
You see, that's perfect that a man would say, or a woman would say, I don't know how I came to that conclusion, because you did the appropriate thing by asking them for their evidence, and they didn't have any. Over and over again, this is what we're going to find when we do this and use these questions. All right, principle 2, we only need to prove our answer is reasonable. That's number 2. So what does that mean? Well, first off, we must answer, is it possible? Well, almost anything is possible. Okay? Martians could have landed on this planet many, many years ago. That's possible. The better question is it reasonable? That's what we need to answer. We need to answer, is it reasonable? Now, when we do answer, is it reasonable? The skeptic may not be satisfied with your answer. You may not be satisfied with your answer. I'm going to tell you, some of these biblical questions or attacks, you may read my answer and you may not be satisfied with my answer when I come up here and try to answer some of these tough ones. There are tough ones. The Bible has some tough areas. But it isn't whether you're satisfied or I'm satisfied or they're satisfied. Is it reasonable? That's the only level we have to reach. That's the only thing that matters. Does it violate the laws of reason? So that leads us to the next point. Oh, I also said, and it's true, some skeptics will never be satisfied. I don't care how many answers you give them. They're going to say, well, I don't like that, or I don't believe that. Well, so is it reasonable? Is the only thing that we have to come up with. And as I said before, almost anything is possible. Now here's an example. We have many scientists who think that life originated on other planets. And then they came here and seeded the earth. All right, is that possible? Yeah. Sure that's possible. But is it reasonable? I'm going to say no. It's not reasonable. Okay? But why do they go to such a wild answer for the origin of life? Well, I'll tell you why. Early life is so complex that they have to come up with this alien answer, because they have, evolution can't explain the highly complex cells that they have found, they would say, billions of years ago. And they're loaded with information. Where does information come from? When Gary was up there asking for proofs from science, my thoughts are information today is the easiest way to unravel the evolutionists. Where does information come from? Each cell, each individual cell has over 3 billion pieces of information. And they all have a purpose. How is that possible? Aliens from outer space seeded the earth. There you go, Doug. Got that one, huh? All right, so now we have to use logic to understand what's reasonable. So, principle 3, we're going to talk about the law of non-contradiction. I've avoided this for years. Maybe you'll see why in just a minute. But this is the key to everything we're going to do, is this law of non-contradiction. And here's the formula, just to confuse you. A is not non-A. A is, I know it has double negatives. Gary would say shame on you, but that's just the way the formula comes out. And all it means is opposites cannot be true at the same time in the same way. Opposites cannot be true at the same time in the same way. All right, here's a statement. Steve spoke at class, and Steve didn't speak at class. Is that a contradiction?
Yep.
Yeah, written that way, yes, it is a contradiction. Opposites cannot be true. A is Steve, and non-A is the Steve didn't. So Steve spoke at class, and Steve didn't speak at class. Those are opposites. They cannot be true. They can't both be true, in other words. Okay? They can't both be true. Opposites cannot be true. Cannot both be true. All right, if I haven't confused you yet, I will now. Here's the next part of this. All right, opposites cannot be true, and we're going to add that statement at the same time, and here's why. Let's go back to the original statement. Steve spoke at class. Steve didn't speak in class. Steve spoke at class at 7:45. Well, I did it at 7:45. It's now 7:50, but I was speaking at 7:45. That's true. And I didn't speak at 9:45. I'm going to be in bed at 9:45, okay? I'll be asleep. That is true. That's a true statement. That's why we have to add those words at the same time. Does that make sense? So time becomes a factor in the law of non-contradiction. It still has to be Steve spoke at class and Steve didn't speak at class. We got to just remember it's at the same time. Okay? I can't speak at class and not speak at time at the same time. That's opposites cannot be true. All right, now how about in the same way? Why does that have to be added? In the same way. Well, here's why the words in the same way have to be added. Steve Bruecker spoke at class, true. And Steve Young didn't speak at class. So all of a sudden we've got two Steves. You don't know who Steve Young was, a quarterback out of BYU, pro quarterback with the 49ers, and now he's an announcer and that sort of thing. Two Steves, but it has to be in the same way. That's why it's added that Steve speaking at class and not speaking at class at the same time and in the same way. That's the law of non-contradiction. It's a complicated way to say that opposites cannot be true. So let's give some just straight up opposites. My pet Kobe cannot be a dog and not a dog at the same time and in the same way. Okay? Kobe is our miniature dachshund, named after Kobe Bryant. I'm a Laker fan. And he's blonde and as cute as can be, okay? He's not the black mamba, okay? If God exists, then the opposite, God does not exist, is false, according to the law of non-contradiction. When atheists pose their challenges, they're assuming the law of non-contradiction, okay? Just wanted to, that's why Gary said no one wants to be a philosopher. Your head may be spinning about now. The bottom line is opposites cannot be true. Both be true. I finally got both in there. Opposites cannot both be true. Either one's true, the other's true, or they're both false, but they both can't be true. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I have a question.
Yes.
What if Kobe cannot be a dog and not a dog?
Yes, and not a dog at the same time and in the same way. They both can't be true.
Put a comma after cannot. I had the same thing.
Oh, you had a problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you run it together, it sounds like you're this motive, but it's not.
Does that make sense that Kobe can't be a dog and not a dog? He's either a dog or he's not a dog. He may be a rat. But if he is a dog, he can't be
In those instances, you're saying he cannot be a dog and not a dog.
No, I'm saying he's either a dog or he's not a dog. They both get, it's going to be one or the other. Does that make sense? It's the same Kobe, yeah, the same way. Yeah, that's right, not Kobe Bryant, because Kobe Bryant is not a dog.
It's not a pet.
Right, so that's why it's the same time and in the same way. It just means contradictions mean that they both can't be true. Yes, because like I said, Steve talked in class, Steve didn't talk in class. And if we made it two different times, that could be true. I added the more information. That more information is needed for the law of non-contradiction. Now, a few other things. Here's a medieval quote, because some people try to deny They try to deny the law of non-contradiction. You can't deny it without using it. And this medieval quote says, anyone who denies the law of non-contradiction should be beaten and burned until he admits to be beaten is not the same as not to be beaten, and to be burned is not the same as not to be burned. I love that. You gotta have the law of non-contradiction. You can't live without, you can't even communicate without it. There's no communication. Not a word I'm saying makes any sense unless words have single meanings that I'm speaking with. That every word I'm saying, the opposite isn't true. If I say that's a chair, I'm not saying that's not a chair. That's why the law of non-contradiction, we use it every day when we communicate. It has to be in place, and this is what the atheists are going to use when they challenge us, when they say that this is a contradiction, therefore the Bible is false. They're going to do that over and over again. All right, now there's scriptural attacks, and I did this series last year, so I'll go through it quickly. But most of this information you probably know already. But if there's a scriptural attack, the first law is to not read a single verse and ignore the context. This is the biggest problem. Most atheists don't read the context. They just read a single verse and then they put forth an attack. And all we have to do is read the context. First off, there are no verses in the Bible. Did you know that? The Bible has no verses. It was added in the 1600s. They're letters. We have the manuscripts, and in the manuscripts, the ancient manuscripts, there are no verses. Why verses? Well, how are you going to figure out what chapter or where to find the saying, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart God raised him from the dead, you will be saved? How in the world are you going to find that without chapters and verses? So it's just for ease, but know that the originals did not have verses. So we shouldn't be singling out these verses and holding them up as proof text for our side or as ways to contradict our position. Yes, Alan?
When the printing press came out, they numbered the sentences so that they could, because everybody had a book now, and they could look it up. That was the point of the numbering.
Okay.
See, I think that it should, it's not that there aren't verses, it's that they're not numbered.
Correct. But the verses, because there's numbers, we yank them out and think they stand by themselves. I guess that's my point. Yeah. Is we pull those verses out because they have a number next to them. And the point is, we need to read the context. We need to read much more than that. Greg Kokel says never read a Bible verse. Do you think he's against reading the Bible?
Nope.
No, he's not against reading the Bible. But we shouldn't be taking single verses and building a case off single verses. So what should we be doing instead? We should be reading everything in context. Context simply means could be the verses above, below, both, the paragraph, the chapter, the book, the whole Bible may be the context for certain passages. But we need to read. This is the one skill that will answer most of the objections. This one skill right here. This is numero uno in doing this. We can't assume that God approves everything written in the Bible. The example is polygamy. Polygamy was done by which characters in the Bible committed polygamy?
David.
Yeah, Abraham was given the servant. David, Solomon. Yeah, Solomon was the king of it. 700 wives, 300 concubines. And we can't assume that God promotes polygamy simply because it talks about it. It's mixing up description with prescription. The Bible describes things as they are. It doesn't prescribe marrying multiple women, or polyandry is women with multiple husbands. Neither are taught as things that we should aspire to. It just describes the truth of history. These are historical figures. They had multiple wives, yes, but as far as I can tell, every single one that committed polygamy had big problems later on. Every single one. I'm reading through Genesis, and I'm reading about Jacob and his 2 wives, and then the wives decide to bring the servants in to help get more kids. And there's all kinds of issues that are going on. And then Jacob has, one disaster after another. So don't think that if it's described, it's prescribed. There are no verses that support polygamy. Second, don't assume God approves behaviors Jesus never talked about. In the area of homosexuality, they say, see, Jesus never condemned homosexuality. Which he didn't directly. He didn't directly mention it, but he did mention sexual immorality. Sexual immorality is any sexual experience outside of marriage. The Bible does not recognize same-sex unions as a marriage. Therefore, a homosexual is doing the sin of sexual immorality. Jesus never condemned peeping Toms. You think that's okay because he never condemned that? How about felony home invasion? Jesus never said anything about felony home invasion by Tyson Stoll, a career criminal. Therefore, you Christians need to leave me alone. Of course, this is from Babylon Bee, one of my favorite apologetic websites. Well, it's a satire site, but I love Babylon Bee. Don't literalize figurative text. The Bible is taken from an observational standpoint. The sun rises and the sun sets. The Bible doesn't talk about the rotation of the earth and the sun in relationship to it. No, weathermen don't do that either. Weathermen, sunrise they're speaking from an observational standpoint. The Bible speaks from an observational standpoint, and the Bible uses metaphors. Jesus is called the door. Did he have hinges? God has feathers. Is he a chicken? So we don't want to, and they may literalize figurative language. All right, then a few other things. I taught this word study, and I find it an easy way to remember 5 steps to doing a Bible study or to what we call exegesis is just to find out what the author means. And those 5 words are select the type of literature, the theme, what is the theme of the passage, understand what's going on, the D is discover the meaning, and the Y is your life. So let's look at each one. Again, this comes into play when they put up a scriptural objection. And again, theme is to read it in context, get the big picture. Understand the structure is to simply dig deeper into what's going on. Who is it written to? What's happening and this sort of thing. I'm gonna let this kind of play out. Now, as far as genre, poetry is interpreted differently than a historical book. So the Bible has different genres, and here's a look at them. The historical books are on the left side. The Pentateuch are the first 5 books, and then come the historical books. Those are historical books. Then we have poetry and wisdom literature in the Old Testament. Then we have the major prophets and the minor prophets. Why are they called major prophets? They're longer. They're longer. That's the only mark. And notice when they were written, that's a timeline there. Notice the minor, the major, and all those books were written about the same time. Isn't that interesting? You know why the prophets were written at the time of 1st and 2nd Kings? is because there was so many problems going on. God sent prophets to warn them and to tell them about the future and all the bad things are going to happen if you keep going down the road you're going. And of course, they didn't listen. But you just notice that they came during that time period. Then here's how the New Testament genre is set out. The Gospels and Acts are the historical books. The epistles are the letters, mainly by Paul, and then comes Revelations, 3 different categories. So you read them differently according to the genre, and atheists aren't going to think about the genre, or skeptics aren't going to think about the genre when they attack the Bible. And then, again, the theme is getting the big idea. Read the context, just like that first point was. Read things in context. So that's the main point of theme. We need to understand the structure and the people involved. You know, what's the situation? What's going on? Who are the people? Is it the old or new covenant they're talking about? And then discover the meaning. Based on the genre, the theme, and your understanding, you can discover the meaning. Now, this one doesn't necessarily apply. All right, the last point, and I went over this. It was something that Alan brought before me. He put this challenge out. Are people today being judged by the Mosaic covenant? And so I took it upon myself to do some research, and I came up with an answer on this Mosaic covenant. And so the law was God's revelation to his people. This is key. To his people. And he broke it down into 3 areas. There were ceremonial laws, there were civil laws, and moral laws. Those are not written out that way. Those are just categories. Like the Trinity is not in the Bible. The word Trinity is not there, but it's taught there. Okay, the Trinity is taught in the Bible, but the word Trinity is not there. We can break the laws down given to Israel, the nation of Israel, through some of them were ceremonial laws, some of them were civil for the society to function, and some were moral laws. Okay, this is all how we break down the Mosaic covenant. The Mosaic covenant begins in Exodus 19. That's when the law begins. And we have it conditional upon Israel's obedience. God does his part, Israel, they have to do their part. There are blessings and there are curses that are put forth in this law. Blessings if they follow God, curses if they don't. It was temporal. Okay, the old covenant was temporal, that's important. And it's completed on the cross. It was finished when Jesus goes to the cross and dies for our sins. So the first question is, if you're wondering about the things I said that's written for Israel are true, we read Exodus 19, like that's where I said it began, 5 through 6. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, again, there it's conditional, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. The Mosaic law was for the Israelites. The Gentiles were not under this particular law. Okay? So what was the purpose of the Mosaic covenant? Well, it provided cultural and government structure. It kept Israel distinct from all the surrounding cultures. They were given instructions for how to live properly. They knew how to worship because of what God gave. It defined sin. They were now aware of sin, and it showed our need for mercy because the law condemns us. We know that. So now I'm saying that the Mosaic covenant ended. It had an ending point. It ended at the cross. Hebrews 8, 7 and 8, for there had been nothing wrong with, if there had been nothing wrong with the first covenant, no place would have been sought for another. But God found fault with the people and said, the time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And skipping to verses 12 and 13, for I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. By calling this covenant new, he has made the first one, the Mosaic covenant, obsolete. And what is obsolete and aging will soon disappear. Okay, if it's obsolete, what good is it for us today? Well, first off, it drives us to Christ. It defines sin. We know what sin is. It drives us to Christ, so we may be justified by faith. We understand who God is through the law. Many of the moral laws are universal moral laws. What are some of the universal moral laws that are in the Ten Commandments? What's a universal moral law of the Ten Commandments? Don't murder. It's actually, the word is better translated murder than kill.
Right.
It's a Hebrew word that our Bibles, our English Bibles, it should say, thou shalt not murder, not kill.
That's premeditated.
Yes, it's different than killing, because killing, you could make a case that the Bible supports capital punishment. I won't do it tonight, but you could make a case there. So there are universal laws. Not to steal is a universal law. Not to lie is a universal law. And how do we know they're universal? Well, first off, they're written on our hearts. God wrote them on our hearts. Romans chapter 2 says that. And they're repeated in the New Testament. So let's quickly apply a couple of these principles that we talked about on the issue of Genesis 1 contradicting Genesis 2. I don't know if you've been asked that or confronted with that, but they say the creation account of Genesis 1 contradicts the creation account of chapter 2. Anybody hear that? Yeah. Well, let's just apply those principles to it. Because some say there's two authors, P and J. But that idea has been rejected by most scholars today because the writings are too similar. Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 look like they're written by one author. And the author is not stupid. You have to be an idiot to write a creation account and then write a contradictory creation account, okay? You got to give the benefit of the doubt to the writer. He writes a brilliant chapter 1. Why would he write a chapter 2 that completely contradicts? And you just need to read the account. The reason I use this is I'm back reading through the Bible, and I just went through Genesis 1 and 2 a couple weeks ago, and I read them, and I said, who in the world thinks these contradict? This is crazy. You just read them. Just read Genesis 1, read Genesis 2. What do you find? Well, you find Genesis 1 is the creation account. It's there. It's in Genesis 1. Genesis 2 is not a creation account. It's going to focus on the garden. It's going to focus on Adam and Eve. That's it. It's a completely different focus. One is this days, one day after another, and how God created the heavens and the earth. The other one is going to focus on this special creation, the creation of humanity. And so when I read it, I don't know how many times I read it, I didn't have to come up with a fancy argument. I just would tell the atheist who puts it out there, have you read the 2 chapters? Have you read chapter 2? It is not a second creation account. It's simply focusing in on the garden, and then that Adam was placed in the garden, and then Eve follows. It's that simple. Read in context. Do not take a verse or a chapter out of context. All right, quickly to review. Remember, put the ball in their court. What do you mean by that? And what's the second one? How did you come to that conclusion? Or why should I believe it? Or why do you believe it? There's a number of ways, but always putting the ball back into their court. Second, we just have to prove it's reasonable. They may not like our answer. They could look at you and say, I don't like that for an answer. And you can just say, well, so. That's the best response you got, so. So what? It's an answer and it's reasonable. That's all it has to be. The law of non-contradiction, I'm going to leave that one alone for good reason. Remember, with Genesis 1 and 2, we remember to read in context. We don't assume that God approves everything written in the Bible. We do not want to mix up descriptive versus prescriptive. That one's going to come in handy too, because so many of the moral issues, they attack the Old Testament more than any other of the two. Between the New Testament and Old Testament, 90%, maybe even more, of the objections are on Old Testament passages. And that's mixing up, and I'm going to tell you, mixing up the Mosaic covenant. Boy, keep that information on the Mosaic covenant. That is so important, because I think they foul that up and they challenge us. They say, well, guys, they used to put kids to death for not honoring their father and mother. Did you put your kids to death? Well, the Mosaic covenant never was written for us. It was written for the nation of Israel. It's obsolete, it's done, and we are under the new covenant. The one thing that stayed were the universal moral laws. They transcended. They were true before the 10 Commandments. It was wrong to murder before the 10 Commandments were written down. Cain was wrong for murdering Abel. How did they know it was wrong? Well, it was written on their hearts. God wrote it on Cain's heart, and he still killed Abel. It was wrong then, even before it was written in stone. You can't assume God approves everything Jesus didn't speak out against, and the Bible uses figurative language. And just, these are for yours. Genre may be a factor. Figuring out what the theme is extremely important, and so forth. And then principle 5 is huge. This is where most of the mistakes come. You're going to see this over and over again when I present some of the objections. It's going to harken back to that. Each week, Gary and I are going to look through some attacks by skeptics. And I think Gary's might be a little bit more philosophical than mine, but doesn't mean he won't hit biblical issues. And I'll mainly focus on biblical issues, but doesn't mean I won't hit some philosophical issues. I haven't decided all the ones I want to do. There's so many, so many attacks that you have to just kind of narrow them down. Well, let me pray, and then we're a little bit late on time, so we'll go from here and have some food. There's some books over there, resources, water, and fellowship. Father, we just thank you for this class and these people that have come out tonight who are hungry to hear the truth and be equipped so that they can be strengthened and bold in their faith and then share what they've learned with others. And so I just pray for open doors for all of us so that we can share the gospel, share the truth of what Jesus did on the cross, in dying on the cross and raising on the third day. And I'm just so thankful for the opportunity you've given us in Jesus' name. Amen.
I have a handout in the back. You didn't get one? Has mine. Has all mine. Yeah. Copy back there. I was passing it out. Somehow you skipped. Sorry about that.